Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Outdoor Adventure Lab. My name is Zan Zerbel, and for anyone who's new to the lab, this is where we have conversations with a wide range of adventurous individuals to educate, stoke, and inspire. In today's episode, Liz Craig and guest host Kimber Cross talk with two badass adaptive athletes, Jono Lewis and Pete McAfee. They'll be talking about adventure as an adaptive athlete, prosthetics used, various gears and modifications, tips and advice they have for others, and so much more. So with that, on to the show.
Kimber, do you want to introduce Jono for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So our first guest, Jono Lewis, is a 31-year-old adaptive athlete who is originally from New Zealand, but now resides in Portland, Oregon, working for the Hanger Clinic and is heavily involved in the rock climbing community. Thanks for coming on the show. Jono, tell us a bit about yourself and your life and how you got where you are today. A little bit intro into you before we introduce Pete.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me. I am Jono, like Bono. I have been rock climbing for about 3 years. So it was after I moved to the States that I started doing that. I'm below the knee amputee of 15 years. I was run over by a tractor when I was a teenager, resulting in the amputation of my leg. So I started rock climbing about 3 years ago, and I actually started an adaptive climbing program here in Portland at Planet Granite. That's been going almost 2 years now. It's kind of the first foray into adaptive sports that I've been a part of, and it's been a really great experience just being able to create like a really comfortable space for people with disabilities to get into rock climbing and to climb together, create community. I guess December last winter, I got roped into going ice climbing. I think Kimber was one of the people that roped me into that, and fell in love with that. And so that's kind of feels like my new big passion. I learned to trad climb during the COVID era, and am kind of interested in alpine climbing now. So it's kind of where I'm headed. And by day, I, as Kimber said, work for the Hanger Clinic, which is a large prosthetics company. I work as a patient advocate and a kind of peer support person.
Awesome, Jono. Thank you so much for sharing that. Our second guest is Pete McAfee, born and raised in Odessa, Texas, along with two younger brothers. From being a professional jet ski surf free rider on the world circuit to climbing and skiing mountains all over the PNW and beyond, Pete does a little bit of everything while making time to spend with his wife and two amazing daughters. Pete, welcome to the show. I'd like to start off by hearing more about your life, how you got into the sports you do, and how that has led to where you are today.
First off, thanks for having me. Stoked to be here. Bear with me. It's like my first Zoom meeting, so I'm figuring this thing out. I born and raised in Odessa, Texas. You wouldn't have thought that I would be doing all the stuff I'm doing coming from the middle of the desert, but I moved out to Oregon.
It looks like his Zoom is frozen just for a little bit. So while we wait for Pete's Wi-Fi connection to strengthen, Jono, I'll go to you. I want to know, first off, about your experience using prosthetics. You're an amazing athlete who just crushes it. But something that's unique to your journey are the tools that you use to get the job done. And so can you dive in a little bit to the prosthetics you use? How hard is it to find a well-fitting prosthetic?
Yeah, that's a really big question. I could talk for a long time about that. I think so. I've been an amputee for 15 years. I really, when I was in New Zealand, I feel like I didn't have a well-fitted prosthesis, and so I've had a lot of troubles with just walking long distances, to be honest. And when I moved to Portland, I found a new prosthetist who was able to get me a really good fit for my my socket on my leg, and that has really opened a lot of doors for me to be able to push myself in the outdoors. And so that's like one part of it. And then, like you said, there's the rest of the tools that go into it. And so for rock climbing, I would say, you know, there's 2 prosthetic climbing feet on the market that you can just go and buy. And they leave like something to be desired, I would say. And so I've spent some time working with a friend and product designer in Portland who was able to build me some like prosthetic climbing feet that perform really, really well. This is one of the ones that I use for rock climbing. It's pretty simple. It's wood and rubber, but it really makes a huge difference to my life as a climber. And hopefully we will be able to turn that into a product and make that more available to other people as well. And then for ice climbing, I have my ice one here as well. So for ice climbing, I essentially have something that one of my prosthetists made, which is it's a crampon, like something you would bolt onto a fruit boot, and then it's screwed onto a metal plate. And then this thing here, the pyramid, attaches to the prosthesis. And so that has really been like an absolute game changer for ice climbing, because weight is really important with a prosthesis. So the more weight that you have on the foot, just the heavier that thing is dead weight. So putting a whole mountain boot and then putting a crampon on that is just like not going to happen for me personally. And so I really feel like when I ice climb, I am attached to the ice. Like the crampon foot really feels like an extension of my body, with the well-fitting socket, with the lightweight crampon. And I don't feel the same limitations that I do when I'm climbing on rock, where I am never really sure if my foot is going to hold. That's kind of an overview of what I use for prosthetics.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jono, for sharing that. Yeah, I feel the same. When I have my prosthetic ice tool on my arm, I feel so connected, not only to the tool, but to the ice. It's awesome how these prosthetics can just open up that world for us. So I will bounce back to Pete. Thank you for being here and getting a good connection. It looks like I can have you finish your introduction, and then I want you to answer that same question that I asked Jono about just the prosthetics you use. What has it been like to get them? How hard has it been to get them fitting? If you have them to show, that would be awesome.
So can you guys see and hear me okay? Perfect. Yeah, I know, introduction, stoked to be here from Odessa, Texas. And I don't know how I ended up playing in the surf and the mountains, but it's been life-changing and I absolutely love it. As far as prosthetics go, I've pretty much fought for everything I got. What I've kind of found is insurance will not buy you what you need for any kind of specialized anything. So everything that I've got, I kind of made on my own. I take normal feet, like maybe old wore out feet. Maybe if one had a broken like base plate and one would have like a broken pylon or broken like shaft of the foot. And I would take the two apart and literally drill holes and bolt them back together. As far as adapting those tools to what I do in the mountains, I've taken and bolted just the carbon skeleton of the foot to the bottom of a ski boot. I cut the bottom of a ski boot off to save weight, like Jono was saying. Ounces add up, and when it's on the end of a prosthetic, the amount of swing, if you can imagine like putting a weight on the end of a baseball bat, it's going to be exhausting at the end of the day. Every ounce adds up. So I bolted the bottom of a ski boot to the skeleton of a prosthetic foot, and that way I can attach crampons, verts, like a specialized climbing snowshoe, to the bottom of that prosthetic. It pretty much what I found is if you if you have an idea of what you need, make it. You got to make it. So.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more on that, Pete. It's really interesting. Like, I feel like the mountaineering side is the first kind of area of prosthetics that I've been involved in that just doesn't really have anything that you can buy, and everything that everyone is using is homemade. And so it's super common for people to like weld together some sort of crampon foot. And I'm also working with a industrial designer in Portland on a more general mountaineering foot. So I have just like a more basic glacier crampon. And then what she's done is actually build this this plate here. I'm not sure if you can see with the contrasting colors, but it's essentially like almost like a universal adapter is what we're trying to make. So it goes onto the crampon, and then it has adjustability to move the pyramid attachment for the prosthesis around. And so that is a really cool thing. I think I would love to be able to make something that people can provide to people, and they can just throw it on a crampon and get going. I think it would just make it a little bit more accessible, as opposed to trying to find someone who can weld you something together. I don't know. I'm not like a very hands-on person, so.
So Marshall asked, someone from the audience was asking, are there any companies specializing in athletic prosthetics? And Jono, it kind of sounds like the company you work with and work for kind of does that. Am I correct?
Yeah, not exactly. So athletic prosthetics, I guess, is a fairly broad term. So if you break it down to say like running prostheses, that's something that, like, you know, most prosthetic clinics will have experience with fitting for patients and setting them up for running. And then there are some swimming legs that some companies make, and I know Kimber for arms, there's TRS prosthetics that makes a whole load of attachments for paddling and fly fishing and climbing and karate and all sorts of stuff. So the things that I've been working on have kind of been like with friends or like with people I've been connected with. I don't know, Kimber, do you know about any other companies that are working on that sort of thing?
Currently none that are actually creating things to be on the market. I know there's companies that are really trying to be created right now that are focused on investors and nonprofit endeavors. And so again, Pete had mentioned insurance, you know, it doesn't cover for uses in the outdoors, in athletics. And so to see organizations and to see people want to go into careers with their skills in engineering and marketing, you know, to create an environment where people can become adaptive athletes, and it's not this immense cost or kind of this improbable dream of, you know, not being able to have an insurance company back you on that. I know some are being created, but none that I personally work with.
So one thing that I've kind of also found with prosthetics, if you get really good at what you're doing, when I was in the jet ski world, when I started winning competitions, and keeping in mind I was competing in able-bodied classes, there were no other adaptive athletes. But if you could imagine the jet ski free ride scene being like 50% surfing and 50% freestyle motocross, you're hitting big aerials, doing big backflips and backflip variations with 350-pound machines, you know, underneath you, and there's no landing ramp in the surf. You're having to dial your landings in to where you make the re-entry back into the water smooth. So if you mess up and you flat land just a little bit, it's a lot of impact. So I started breaking a lot of feet. I was breaking up to 4 feet per month doing that sport, and until I got really good at it. But basically when insurance said, hey, we're out, we're not replacing any more feet or whatever, I started hitting up prosthetic companies directly. And True Life Prosthetics was awesome. Like they jumped on and were like, hey, you know, we want you to demo some feet for us. We'll send you feet. You try to break them, let us know, give us feedback. So I think that a lot of prosthetic companies out there are willing to help when insurance won't help you. You just have to reach out to them, let them know what you need and what you're doing. And I think a lot more of them are willing to work with people than what we realize, you know.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. It's nice to hear though, like kind of refreshing, not that they're all out there just for the insurance money for prosthetics and whatnot. So that's really cool that you've been able to like connect with them directly and work with them to like create something that's going to be beneficial going forward too, and not just to like improve something that's out there. Go ahead, Jono.
I just love to touch on that because I think you're right, Pete. There's a lot of prosthetics companies that are willing to kind of, I guess, front athletes with things like that. But I think a lot of the reason for that is that there's not so many athletes that they have to be fronting it for. And I think it's a big gap in the insurance system here that, you know, basically, like Kimber was saying earlier, sports prostheses are just not something that insurance covers ever. And that is, in my mind, a real problem. I have a friend who's an amputee who is working on basically a petition for Congress to try to make athletics like basically a right for people with disabilities, kind of like some sort of extension on the ADA. I'll pop a link to that in the comments there.
Yeah, that's a good point, Jono, sorry, butchering your name. But to that point, yeah, that like because you were born without fingers on your hand, or because you were in an accident, you're no longer, like, insurance won't help you to achieve your full potential. Because even with like a regular prosthetic, not an athletic prosthetic, like there's so much untapped potential there that, like, Kimber, who did you go through to work with to get your ice tool prosthetic? Because you were working with Paradox Sports. That's how you figured out or learned about them?
I learned about Paradox Sports through Maureen Beck. She's a North Face athlete and an adaptive climber. But I actually was lucky enough to connect with a specific prosthetics doctor in Washington, and he had no idea what ice climbing was, but heard of my need and offered to do it pro bono. So it was this surprise, huge gift that a doctor like gave his time separately and did it out of his own pocket, because he's like, I make them for other athletes. I've never done it for a mountaineer, for an ice climber. So it was kind of a totally different situation, but yeah, there's no insurance for that. So I really don't know what I would have done had I not had the generosity of a prosthetics doctor at that time.
And they're all prosthetics they have to be custom built, correct? Or do you have an adapter that fits on, and pardon me if I'm butchering any of this, but like, there's nothing that you could put like an adapter on your stump that would fit, and like the universal connection that would connect to any adapter you want. So like for Jono, wow, I keep butchering your name. For Jono, like you have your climbing stump and you have your ice climbing stump or prosthetic. Is it a common hold on to the
I got you.
Okay, thank you.
No, thanks. That's a really good question, Liz. So I have two prostheses.
Okay.
I've got one that is like my everyday walking one, and I do a lot of hiking in that as well. And then I have another one which is kind of like my everything else one. So the prosthetic is made up of two parts, and so I'll try to kind of show it. So this is the part that attaches to my stump. So this has to be custom made. It's made from a cast, and then there are modifications because it's got to be like a super specific fit.
Right.
And
And you
then,
have two of those, correct?
yeah. So I've got
One for every day.
one that I walk in, and then one that that I play in. And so with that, you can take something like my climbing foot and connect it in right here. And then what I can do is I can use screws to take the climbing foot off and then put the crampon foot on, that kind of thing. And you can also like swap out, say, like some sort of walking foot for that as well. Definitely possible. Yeah.
And then I kind of alluded to this in our event description about sweaty stumps. There was something, I noticed this in your bio, you're working on, this is a challenge that comes with wearing a prosthetic all the time. Do you want to touch on that? And maybe Pete, you can join in as well.
Yeah, I would love to hear like what Pete's experience is. And mine is basically like baseline, even without a prosthesis, I'm like a sweaty guy. So I struggle in the summer. You know, the prosthetic is basically like I'm wearing like a closed gel over my stump. And then I'm putting that inside of a bucket, essentially. And it heats up, and there's nowhere for the sweat to go except to pull in my liner that attaches to my stump. And so I basically, like when I'm out hiking in the summer, like I have to take the thing off every half mile sometimes if it's really hot, and just dump the sweat out, like a quarter of a cup of sweat at a time, and really go for it. It's problematic. I recently I got some Botox injections into my stump to try to alleviate that sweat. So Botox, you know, typically you could use it for wrinkles, and what that does is it essentially like paralyzes the muscles and they stop contracting, so the wrinkles go away. And so with sweat, it's like paralyzing the nerves that control the sweat glands. So I did that. It seems like it has been mildly effective, but I maybe need to get some more done. But like Pete, what's your beta for sweat, man?
Oh man, a couple sweaty guys here, Jono. So man, I don't have a magic answer for that. I sweat like crazy. I do the same thing as you. I pull my liner off, and sweat dumps out of that thing, and it's amazing how much we sweat. Pretty much, and this is horrible advice, if I'm on a mission and I'm in the zone and I am powering up a mountain, I don't stop and deal with it. I just let my stump piston in that liner. I mean, I've got calluses that are huge on my stump. It's crazy, man. Like, you'd have to rub through like a 1/4 inch of skin for me to even feel it at this point. So I just let skin break down, and I deal with it at the end of the day. And I mean, it's nasty and it's ugly, and I've probably been lucky that I haven't had enough skin breakdown to have a serious like abscess, but I just kind of hammer through it, and it always seems to work itself out. So there's also one other a question from Frank about how do I get around at the bottom of a slope, you know, when I'm skiing, because I ski without a prosthetic. It's so easy, man. If you've got use of your upper extremities and you've got outriggers, literally it's like hand crutches at the bottom of the slope. You use them just like ski poles to push yourself on the flats to get back to the lift, except you have an advantage over regular able-bodied people with regular ski poles, because those outriggers are extremely tough and extremely thick, and we've got handles and cuffs on them like crutches. You can propel yourself through the snow far more efficiently with those than any skier, able-bodied skier, could with regular ski poles. You just have to have the outriggers. And I use the Superlight outriggers out of Colorado, and they work awesome.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing those detailed images of, you know, what your legs go through when you're using your prosthetics. I know I have a question for you when it's winter sports, you're winter skiing, or Jono, even for you when you're ice climbing. I know using my prosthetic, when it's cold, you know, when you're ice climbing and it's, you know, 17-degree or colder weather, it's been a little bit of a challenge to keep my hand warm. The circulation is poor anyways, but that liner has kind of that silicone, you know, where it grips. So in the winter, it's a challenge for me to stay warm. I want to know what you guys do to kind of protect you.
Yeah, I can jump in on that. I think that I've been kind of lucky. It hasn't been a problem for me. So I have noticed, I would say I probably haven't been in environments that are quite as cold as you. So maybe down to 15, something like that. I haven't had much trouble with it. Like, it's made my stump a little bit numb, which has actually been sort of nice because it's not painful. Maybe that's not a healthy way to look at it, but I don't think it's been numb in a bad way. I bet that you could make some sort of like tea cozy to put on the outside of your socket or something. Like, just ask someone to make you one. Ask on your Instagram.
Amber can just use a beer koozie. Stick a
Yeah.
little-
If it works for mountain biking, yeah, perhaps it'll work for ice climbing.
So I've got something I do for the cold, extreme cold. The last, I guess, 2 or 3 years, I've spent the entire month of February just camping out, northern Idaho and Montana, Utah, and literally I'll spend like 5 nights camping and maybe get a hotel room for 1 night a week, you know. And I think it was the year before last, they had that polar vortex that was kicking down some crazy cold temperatures in northern Montana and Canada. And it was getting down to minus 40 Fahrenheit at night. So even during the day, it was like highs in the negatives. And I actually did some damage to my stump. I got like some frost nip going on there where it just, it took me about a month to recover from. So after that, I basically got the heated ski socks, and you can cut them however you need to, as long as you don't cut the leads that are in them, the heating elements in them. And you can just duct tape them around the socket, your prosthetic socket, and it will actually, it worked awesome. I mean, it basically kept my stump from freezing when I was out skiing. So that's something to think about. Maybe people could use that. There's probably like pipe insulation or something that would work even better, but the heated socks, ski socks, seem to work the best for me. And the great thing is, being a single amputee, you order a pair of socks, you got 2 battery packs, so it lasts you twice as long.
That's brilliant. I'll be looking into that for my ice tool. So I wanted to kind of segue into asking both of you, either can answer first, what draws you to the outdoors, and what have you climbed, or what's like one climb that you have just loved, or a flow, Jono, what's, you know, a waterfall that you've climbed that you just love? That'd be fun to hear about.
Yeah, totally. I wouldn't say that. I like I said at the beginning, I'm kind of a baby when it comes to the mountaineering because I'm so new. But one really memorable climb for me was out in Uray. It was an ice climb. It was my friend Sam, or our friend Sam Kimber, took took me up this backcountry multi-pitch ice climb, and that was really, I think that was what got me interested in mountaineering. I really felt like it was just so fun to be out there and like multi-pitching ice and rappelling off a V-thread and all sorts of stuff, and it was just beautiful. And I think that kind of experience is what draws me to the outdoors, just to continue to have that kind of connection to the world, I suppose, and do something that is just so different from city life. I guess it's quite refreshing, and sometimes it's terrifying, and you can grow a lot through those sorts of experiences, and I find that appealing.
So as far as one mountain would go for me, I mean, I love Mount McLaughlin. I love all the Cascade volcanoes because it's like this summit objective in the wintertime. And I guess really probably Mount Shasta would be one that I keep going back to. And I love it because of the amount of elevation gain. Like you start out at like 6,900 feet and you climb to 14,000, almost 200 feet, 14,200 or so. And you can do it in a day. You can make base camp, do it in a couple days. I like blitzing it in one day and just getting it done. But the main reason that I like going out and doing that objective, all of my friends, they do it once and they never do it again because they check it off their bucket list. It's like a huge objective for them. It's the second highest peak in the Cascade Range. But for me, it's about the grind. I like going up there and just torturing myself all day. Just see how hard you can push it and not stop. You know what I mean? And once you figure out like your body, you're not going to kill yourself. Your body's going to figure out a way to maintain. Like you spike your heart rate in the beginning, and then it kind of levels out and it figures out like, okay, he's not stopping. We're just going to keep this up and we're going to figure out a maintainable pace all day. But I'm drawn to that mountain over and over again for the same reason that people don't want to do it again, is because it's hard and it's torture. There's really, looking at it, there's nothing fun about it, but the feeling you get when you're done, that satisfaction, that accomplishment, that knowing you worked so hard for it, you can't sell that. I mean, it keeps pulling me back in. But that's probably one of my favorites to go back to. It's just an absolute suck fest all day, every time. And it's awesome.
Yeah, that type 2 fun that we just can't get enough of. I love it. Thank you for sharing those. My next questions I want to focus on really deal with just what are some factors that you have to take into account when heading out on a trip or a climb. You know, people throw together their kit for whatever objective they have, even heading out. It can sometimes be a little bit different for an adaptive athlete about, you know, how far you can travel, you know, using a prosthetic leg, or how heavy things are. You know, I know my prosthetic comes to 2.7 pounds. It's a lot heavier than a normal ice tool. And so, yeah, what other factors kind of play in as you prep for your objectives? And then what happens, or have you ever had an issue with your prosthetic when you're out on the trips, the adventures, and the climbs? So Jono, why don't you take that off first? Yeah,
absolutely. There's definitely a few things that go into those thoughts. So I traditionally have had trouble hiking, and I think that when I was first getting into climbing and outdoor climbing, it was really intimidating for me to think about going, and like the approaches were intimidating, getting to climbs. And I think that, you know, one part of being able to overcome that was having a prosthesis that fit me really well. But another huge part of that was just having friends and climbing partners that were able to make me feel comfortable that hey, if I go out and I like can't get to where we're trying to go, like that's okay. Like nobody's having a bad day. And that was really a big part of that. And so considerations for me are really what kind of feet I need to bring. So if I'm going rock climbing, like cragging, that's like really straightforward. It's like, okay, I'm going to bring my extra socket and I'm going to bring a climbing foot, usually just one climbing foot, unless it's looking like it's almost going to fall apart, and then I might bring two. And then for ice climbing, I've only been ice climbing since about December last year, and that is really just like the same thing. Okay, I need to take a crampon to climb with, and like you're saying, Kimber, weight is a huge consideration with those things. I think my current ice, like vertical ice crampon, weighs 500 grams. It's like a pound, just over a pound. So that by itself is heavy thing to put in the pack. I've been fairly fortunate in terms of malfunctions. I've heard from friends that have below knee legs that they sometimes have their locks for their pin lock systems malfunction. And so one of my friends, he actually takes a backup lock out with him now, because that happened to him. On an alpine climb recently, I totally blew through all the rubber on my climbing foot. Was something that happened, and I was basically just climbing on straight wood by the end of it, because it turned into a long day. But otherwise, other than that, I've been pretty lucky. Yeah. How about you, Pete?
So definitely always carry a lot of duct tape with you in the backcountry. Everybody that knows me knows I've always got duct tape on me, and it's amazing what you can fix with duct tape. I mean, there was one big hike that I did, and I was about 15 miles into the backcountry, and I broke broke my foot, the shank of my prosthetic foot. So, as I'm sure you've probably done this before, Jono, it gets really soft, that carbon splinters and delams, and it's pretty mushy. And that was something that I could kind of just, well, I got a squishy foot and it's going to sound pretty crunchy, and I'm not going to have, it's like walking on a flat tire, but there's no motivator like necessity. There's only one way out, and you're going to get it done. But then I've also had a situation where I was in the backcountry and I had the lock break on my prosthesis. Now, I've blown through locks before, so I always wear a knee sleeve when I'm in the backcountry along with the locking system, because that's going to be a suspension sleeve, is going to help hold the prosthetic on. And then on top of that, if you've got duct tape, I've literally duct taped my socket to the liner, to my skin, and it gets you out of a situation. You know, it always works. So duct tape is a cheap way to have you, I mean, have some sort of ability to repair something in the backcountry.
Duct tape and belay straps are like two awesome things to always have in your kit. So I kind of wanted to circle back to, speaking of cheap ways to fix things, one of the audience members had asked, how much does a prosthetic cost? And then do you guys have any future goals or future prosthetics that are on your dream list, on your wish list?
Yeah. Prosthetics are crazy expensive here in the US. So I'm from a country that has a like universal public health system, and I've never had any trouble getting prosthetics from New Zealand. They just provide whatever you need. And here is obviously a very different system, and it took me a while to figure out how to navigate it. The first thing that you need is you need the right insurance that is actually going to cover prosthetics, because not all of them do. And once you have that, you are looking at, like, best case, probably like a 20, or maybe if you're lucky, a 10% copay. Below knee prosthesis, if you're looking at the socket and the foot, could run you $10,000 to $15,000 before you pay 20% of that. And then for an above knee prosthesis, you're looking at, you could go, the sky's the limit really. Microprocessor knees are very expensive, so they can get up to $50,000 to $100,000. So it's pretty unobtainable for some people, and especially for new amputees who need a lot of like regular new sockets, because they are, post amputation, they are losing volume on the leg, their swelling is going down, and eventually you need to make a new leg. And so that can be pretty out of reach for some people, which is not a great situation. So in terms of dream prosthetics, for me, I'm working right now on, I love all the stuff that I have. I'm so happy with what I'm using right now. But the only problem I have is having to carry a whole extra leg in my bag. So one thing I'm working on, my current prosthetic leg, my everyday one that I like hiking on, it is directly mounted to my socket with like a carbon fiber wrap. So I'm trying to work on getting a foot that just attaches kind of like my climbing foot does. So hopefully I'll get there.
Yeah, I mean, as far as dream prosthetics go, I don't think there's any magic prosthetic out there. Like, you pretty much have to figure it out on your own. And the silver lining to that is you can do a lot more than what you think you can with a lot less. I mean, I've literally walked around on broomsticks, that were taped into the bottom of my socket before, literally, with like a crutch tip on the end of it or something. And you'd be amazed at what you can get done with that. Like, you can accomplish a lot of things with a plain old like peg. I mean, it's pretty incredible. But I recently did get a Indolite Blade XT. I don't know if you've seen these, Jono, but man, they are sweet. They are kind of like a small blade with a heel plate on it. So you can still walk on the thing, but it's got a lot more return than like a standard prosthetic foot. So they run really well. They're pretty light. They don't have a foot shell on them. They're treaded on the bottom of the carbon base plate. I'm pretty sold on it. And as far as insurance go, that was one foot that I was able to get insurance to buy me, because we were able to categorize it as like an everyday prosthetic foot, which I use it for everything, walking, running, hiking, whatever. The only thing I don't use it for is ski mountaineering. With the ski mountaineering thing, or any kind of mountaineering objective, you don't want something that's going to flex a lot. You need something really solid, so that when you kick a step, you know that it's solid. But as far as like an everyday foot goes, I'm pretty happy with that Indolite Blade as of right now.
Yeah, that's cool, Pete. I've seen the Indolite. I've never tried it because I don't actually have enough clearance to wear that. So I guess I'm like not tall enough, basically. I have something that's pretty similar. I wear a Cheetah Explorer, which kind of like yours. I'll just pop it off right here. So I have it's carbon fibered onto the back. It's like the Indolite, where it's like a hybrid type thing for running and walking, and then it has no foot shell. Dear amputees out there, if you ever get the opportunity to get a foot without a foot shell, go for it. But yeah, those hybrid feet are really cool. I'm pretty sure they're categorized, most of them, as K3, which is a activity level for insurance purposes. So most people should be able to actually get those through insurance. They're awesome.
And I'm not sure if you guys can see it, but I just popped my leg off here. So there is like the Indolite Blade here. It's kind of like a running foot. And then also I just got my my homemade mountaineering foot here. It's like filthy right now. Let me see if I can flip this this around so you guys can see it a little better. I don't know. Can you guys see me right now? Okay. So here is the homemade foot. It's basically just a ski boot bottom there that I just bolted a foot to it. And I mean, that's what I use for all of my backcountry snow, anything, whether I'm snowshoeing long distance or climbing like a Cascade Peak, or if I'm climbing like couloirs in the Wasatch. That's what I'm using, because you can attach any standard crampon, snowshoe. You could put in standard bindings like on skis if you needed to ski on 2 feet for something. It makes it universal with not the non-adaptive world equipment, you know?
That's really cool, Pete. We're gonna have to chat more about that, because I'm kind of working on that kind of stuff right now. Can you walk on a trail with that as well? Is it only for snow or what?
No, it's got a ski boot base on it. So absolutely you could walk down a trail, and there's been times that I'll walk several miles to get to the snow, and I just wear that thing and walk in it. People always are like, wow, that's crazy. You know, why don't you just put on a shoe or whatever, your other foot? I'm like, hey, I cut the bottom of a ski boot off. This is like an all-terrain kind of ski boot anyway, bottom, and it's pretty light. And they're like, well, it looks really rigid. And I'm like, yeah, but most prosthetic feet are about the equivalent of walking on a brick anyway. So what's the difference, you know? It doesn't flex a whole lot. You're on dirt gives a little. Just hammer down that trail and get to the snow.
So, Pete, and pardon me if you've already answered this, when you're skiing, you're only skiing with one ski and then your 2 outriggers. What do you do with your prosthetic? Like, you don't have a ski on it, right?
Correct. Yeah, no,
Is it just hanging out, or do you take it off and throw it in your pack? How does that?
absolutely. I take it off, I throw it on my pack, and the prosthetic is huge. So basically I keep my socket on because it's a great stump protector. If I tag a rock or something when I'm doing a nasty line, I have something protecting my stump from just exploding on a rock. So I keep the socket on, and I literally just detach right off the bottom of the socket, pull the pylon out, and then just strap that onto my backpack, and I just ski down on one ski. So another silver lining thing, I always look at the glass as half full. It's, you know, when you're skiing on one ski and you're skiing some nasty lines or whatever, you're on one ski, you can fit between rocks better than you can with 2 skis. You're skinnier than you were on 2. And like, you never have to worry about crossing tips. If you do get bucked off your line, you don't have to worry about crossing tips. You pick right back up and get on it. Just stay in the front seat.
Oh man, probably less knee injuries too, because your ski's always they're only going one direction because there's only one of them.
You learn how to initiate a turn on that outside edge better than anybody else on the mountain. It's crazy.
I love that silver lining for my ice tool when I'm leading. You know, it's kind of an advantage. Like, I'm never gonna kind of pump out or get those infamous screaming burpees. Hang in there. I can just take my time placing a screw. So I have some partners, you know, that use 2 ice tools, and they're always like, hey, like, man, but it's like, you know, there's some benefits.
There's always benefits. It's amazing. You can always find, it's a mindset thing. If you want to, you will find an advantage to your situation. Another huge advantage I have, for example, have you guys ever done South Sister?
Mm-hmm.
You guys climbed that one outside of Bend?
Yeah.
It's a great one. So you know how it's really steep in the beginning, and then you've got this long flat for like 2 miles, and then it gets really steep again, right? So when I hit that flat, I'm used to skiing on one ski anyway. So I literally just throw my one ski on, I keep my leg on, and I literally just skateboard down across the flat on one ski, and it's nuts. You have such a huge advantage over everybody else. No one's going to be able to skate ski or pole ski or walk as fast as you can go skateboarding on a ski. Like, it's just nuts. So you can always find an advantage to your situation.
Oh man, that's definitely an advantage. But I know that spot, and it's very flat, and the golf course, it just goes on and on and on forever. Yeah, that sounds great to have like a little booster to kick you along. We had a question from the audience about what outdoor adventure missions are you guys working towards and any goals? And kind of along that same line, what kind of cross training do you guys do for your big mountain missions or whatever?
I feel hardly qualified to answer this question, but I'll give it a go. So I kind of do, I do a mix of things. Basically, I like to think about training like whatever my body wants to do and makes it feel good. I find I don't run. It's not something that I really enjoy. So I find cycling is a good way for me to build strength in my legs and also to like get my heart rate up, doing intervals on the bike. And then cross training for climbing, just like general strength stuff. I'm a big fan of doing push-ups and box jumps and pull-ups and all that kind of stuff, as well as yoga, because I feel like I get really tight. I think on my prosthetic side, I get extra tight in the hip flexor, just because I don't know, my muscles don't quite engage in the same way with having a no calf muscle and a stiff ankle. So that's kind of a big thing. I saw also on that question, there was a question about outdoor apparel alterations, and I definitely find that adding a zip to pant legs to be really, really helpful, so that I don't have to take my pants off whenever I want to do something with my leg. And I usually just take pants to a tailor to get that done.
Yeah, so as far as alterations go, I'm the duct tape king. I usually I've gotten to where I quit cutting the legs off of my ski pants because it just ruins the Gore-Tex. So I've gotten to where I literally just hike my pant leg up and take a cinch strap and just tighten that boot cuff around my socket of my prosthetic. And then I just roll the pant leg back down over itself. So it looks like, that way my prosthetic is exposed, my pant leg's not dragging. I don't have to worry about tripping and snagging crampon on a pant leg that is essentially useless anyway. But then at the same time, I'm not just absolutely hacking and mutilating my pant leg. So that's the alteration question. And also, if you do have to cut something, which I've done in the past, I duct tape everything. I literally just duct tape everything up that I cut. So that's it. As far as objectives go, I just want to keep hammering. I just want to keep climbing peaks. I know it's easy to get complacent and stay somewhere comfortable. And if you can't get like a big objective going, mountains close to home, for me, pick a different line. Pick a different line to climb something that's harder than what you did the last time. And pick a steeper line to ski. Pick something that maybe has like a mandatory drop in or some sort of obstacle partway down. That's kind of how I look at it. But future objectives, I'd like to crank out at least 2 new peaks every season to summit and ski. And that's kind of been my mission. As far as cross training and keeping in shape goes, I'm like Jono. I absolutely hate running. But that being said, I think it's good for you to do things that are really hard and make you uncomfortable. So I'm not like a crazy distance runner. I don't do a ton of running, but I run on average 6 or 7 miles a week. And on top of that, I'm doing a lot of burpees, I'm doing a lot of push-ups, doing a lot of chin-ups. And then I want to be a hybrid. I want to look good too. So I go to the gym and I lift weights, you know. I would say probably about 4 days a week, I am doing an hour of cardio in the morning and an hour of weight training in the evening. So that's kind of my standard.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing all that. Yeah, I think cycling is definitely something I took up, you know, with the pandemic starting and not being able to get out or go to the gym. You know, that's something that I found totally prepped me for this last season of climbing, is really being able to put in those miles. And there's a lot of hills out here in my neighborhood in the Northwest. So yeah, I got a good gravel grinder and road trail. Yeah, it was cool to find that to be a great way to train for the mountains. I want to segue into a really important topic right now for the adaptive community and people in the outdoors to really think about. I want to know what your two opinions are when it comes to the idea of being an inspiration. And what is your take? Some really want to be seen as just an athlete that's crushing it, and that inspiration phrase can sometimes be taken negatively. And I just want you to elaborate, like, what are your thoughts on how people can support the adaptive community, and what kind of language is really the most respectful to use when you're seeing an adaptive climber for the first time and like you're just stoked at what they're doing? Like, what is the most respectful way to respond and encourage adaptive athletes?
So I'm going to be the worst person to answer this question. So Jono's answer is going to be a lot more important than what I've got to say, because I fully believe if you walk through life looking for a reason to be offended at something somebody says, you're going to close a lot of doors. You're not going to make many connections. Okay. So if somebody's trying to talk to you and they're trying to tell you you're an inspiration, or they're trying to give you a compliment, even if it comes out wrong, maybe it rubs you the wrong way, don't let it. Just take it as this is somebody that's going to get something good out of this. You know, they're giving me a compliment. Roll with it, be proud of it, thank them for it. I don't believe I'm an inspirational person. Maybe you don't think you're an inspirational person, but I guarantee you there's a lot of people that think about it the other way. They think you're something special, you're inspiring others, and just take that compliment and go with it. I try to never be offended by anything. I've got thicker skin than that.
Yeah, that's a good point, Pete. I think that I probably land somewhere in the middle of that. I have definitely been called inspiring, and I think, like Pete says, it's definitely something that when somebody says you're inspiring, it comes from a good place. They want to say something to you, but they're not quite sure what to say. And I think that sometimes there can be just a little bit of like a misuse of the word, perhaps. And it's definitely contextual, and it depends on the person in terms of whether you should say what you should say to them. And I've been called inspiring when I'm just like belaying at the crag. And that does feel really weird. I remember belaying at Ozone, and like some guy came in and he was like, "Oh my God, are you climbing with one leg?" And I was like, "No, I'm belaying with one leg." It's just like, come on, you know. And then there are other times when maybe I'm climbing like a 512 on an overhang at the gym, and someone says it to me, and it's like, yeah, okay, cool, I'll take that. Like, I feel good about that. That was hard. And I think that it's important, like Pete was saying, to remember that it is always coming from a good place. People are just not quite sure what words to use. And if somebody says something that is like kind of especially rude to me, I do try to call them out on it and say like, hey, this didn't really offend me, but that will definitely offend other people. And I think it's good for everyone to just be aware that if you are saying something to somebody, whether you're calling them inspiring or you're saying good job, like you are calling out a visible disability, and you are calling out, something that a person probably has like some maybe triggers with or feels uncomfortable with. And so just be aware of that. And not to say like don't approach people, and especially with me, come and tell me how inspiring I am and yell it at me when I'm climbing. But yeah, just be aware of those things. What do you think, Kimber? I'd love to hear your thoughts. I know that you have been you talk a lot about how you were inspired by Mo with her ice climbing prosthetic, and so what do you think?
Yeah, I think I love both your perspectives, and I think that merging, and I think there needs to be that duality of both perspectives in this world, as is with all the other kind of worlds we live in with differences and our uniqueness. I'm a kindergarten teacher, and 5-year-olds have no filter. So my skin is pretty thick. And I kind of side with not much can offend me, and intentions and beliefs. I really accept any kind of compliment. I love turning that, well, that's an inspiration, like into a conversation of like, man, I really want to normalize this for the next generation. And what is inspiring to see, I want kids growing up to see that as normal. That's not special. It is unique. It takes, a lot of really faith in yourself and a community that supports you, to be an adaptive climber that doesn't quit. Because I fully believe if you don't quit, you win. And I believe in that just personal grit and perseverance is so important. And so, for me, I love turning that, if someone talks to me about, wow, you're inspiring, or comes up to me into the gym and they're like, hey, you're just inspiring, I see you with one hand. I want to talk about like, yeah, dude, like that's just how I was born. And like, it's so cool to normalize this. And I want the next generation to see that nothing can stop you. Nothing truly can stop you. And the importance of believing in yourself. And so I kind of want to move that into your thoughts as we wrap this up on the significance of representation and normalizing just this world of adaptive athletics. And with that representation, how can non-adaptive athletes, that non-adaptive climbers really kind of support us? What does that look like for both of you?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Representation is really key. And I guess like just to touch on that inspiration thing again, I personally don't have a problem with people coming up to me and saying that to me and engaging with me. I love to talk about being an adaptive climber with people and show them my prosthetic. And I think that though, because maybe disabilities are underrepresented in climbing, that is really something that for other people maybe that are newer to climbing can be intimidating. I think that even when you start climbing as an able-bodied person, climbing is kind of scary and you feel like you don't know what you're doing and everybody is so much better at it than you. And so I think having a disability, especially a visible disability, is it kind of compounds that a little bit. And I think representation can help a lot with that. And so that's really, like you're saying, trying to normalize those conversations, but also trying to normalize how we view climbers and how we view climbers with disabilities. And that's really just about seeing more of them. So I think, panels like this are awesome. And a lot of the stuff that you do, Kimber, I think is like, it's really like it grows that awareness so much. And I think you can have a real change in the way that people view climbers with disabilities, and it's more of a positive thing, and it's more normalized. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I definitely enjoy having those conversations. I'm sure you do, Pete. What do you think?
Absolutely, man. I'm super approachable, and I will never be offended by anything anybody brings my direction. And you know what? If you're coming at me like in a negative way like that, I mean, if you're trying to offend me, I'm gonna shut it down. So I'm not gonna put up with it. But yeah, as far as like empowering like the adaptive community, the only way that's gonna happen, and the only way we're gonna be viewed as like anybody else, like any other athlete on the market, is it starts on a personal level. I mean, like you and I have to get out there and perform. You've got to dedicate yourself to achieving what you want to achieve and being an athlete in order for people to view you that way. If you don't get out there and try, and you're not going to get it the first time, you're going to fail. I mean, just because I climbed, Mount McLaughlin or Mount Shasta or Thielsen yesterday doesn't mean I'm going to be able to climb it tomorrow. And in the same sense, just because I failed today doesn't mean I'm not going to succeed tomorrow. Like your life is not, you're not losing unless you fully give up. As long as you keep trying and you keep hammering, you're going to get better. And people are going to view you as an athlete the better you get. That's bottom line. That's what it is. And definitely things like this and adaptive programs, and anybody you can find, like if you can get out into an adaptive program, you might be a beginner or a first timer and nervous as hell today getting out there, but tomorrow you're going to be helping inspire new adaptive athletes to get out there and start getting it themselves. Literally, it all starts with you. You have to get out there and make it happen.
I think that is so well said, Pete. And something that's just the walk I'm trying to live in my life. And, I had goals and I wanted to climb, and it's pretty amazing when you have that belief in yourself, but then you're surrounded by a community, both of adaptive and non-adaptive athletes. There's an organization called Paradox Sports. I've talked about before, and they do amazing things hosting climbs, whether ice or rock, whatnot, where it's a community where adaptive climbers, new or veteran, can come and climb together and learn from each other and support each other. And I'm now a climb leader in the Mountaineers, the organization out here in Washington, and being their first adaptive climb leader, where I'm setting the climbs up and instructing. And that was huge to go into something where I was like, I can fully do it, and have the committee at first go, oh, is this going to be safe for her? Is this going to be safe for her partners? It was new for them. And what I was like, yeah, totally, I can belay, I can rappel, I'm going to figure out how to ice climb. Like, I can do all these things. It was so great to have advocates within the Mountaineers that, one was an injured veteran, just other people that were like, oh no, like, we will be your advocate. We will make sure you are able to stay in the basic alpine course, in the intermediate alpine course, working your way, like, where the expectations, the safety for me, like, it didn't change. I still had to rise to every challenge and pass every test and show my skills, show my technical skills, and excel at those. Like, that's important to me regardless of if I'm adaptive. But I just think it's so important for a community, while we're normalizing, while that representation is growing, to really have a community that's like, oh, this is possible. Like, those modifications, those adaptations, like, right on. Like, and that's what I hope continues to open up for people, to where they can, I don't just have to go climb within a group of adaptive climbers to feel accepted. I love that. That's where we build our community. That's where we build our confidence, but I want to go get on ice with Connor at Anchor. What's up, Conrad? Let's go. Where like, that's my goal. Like, I want to be included in everything and have those skills that back up my desire to be included. And so I really see that growth in the last couple of years, and I just hope it continues. So.
Yeah, that's super cool. Plug for local adaptive outdoor sports organizations. Oregon Adaptive Sports in Bend, OAS. They do rock climbing as well as skiing and mountain biking and hiking and all sorts of stuff. They're a really cool crew. I think I've worked on them with an adaptive climbing clinic that we had at Smith Rock last year at the Kraken Classic, which we would have had again this year if it was going forward. But love OAS, and then there's also Adventures Without Limits, who do rock climbing as well in the Portland area and general Oregon area. Yeah, I think for anyone that is looking for ways to get into the sport, like reach out to people like us and reach out to Paradox, because they have a really good kind of like nationwide presence as well. So yeah, how about you, Pete?
Man, you mentioned OAS. Those guys are awesome. Super cool crew. I mean, they helped donate some bi-unique sit skis to us to get us kicked off a couple years ago at Mount Ashland with the adaptive program. Came out, like basically taught us how to help teach adaptive skiers to ski, not just 3-tracking like I do it, but also in sit skis. I literally at the slopes, I can, and I often load sit skis, like bi-unique skis, onto chairs, assisting that. And I'm on one ski. I'm not wearing my leg when I'm doing that. You can always help. You can always do stuff. But OAS is huge. And just get out there, start asking questions. Any adaptive organization, you're going to find people in it who are like, yeah, let's go. I'll take you out. Let's go hit some backcountry, and you're going to learn a lot. Like, I've kind of had to learn everything from the ground up on my own. I didn't really know about these organizations, and I just started doing it, started making my own modifications and just hammering it. And I have failed and failed and failed until I figure out what works. So anybody looking to get out there and do backcountry skiing or resort skiing or whatever, hit me up. I don't care if I have to travel somewhere to meet up. If you're serious about it, I'll go out there with you, show you what I know. I'm not hiding any secrets from anybody. So I'm down to help anybody who wants it.
How do you guys see the adaptive community growing, or how do you hope to see it grow over the next 5 years? Like, where would you like to see the adaptive community of skiing and ice climbing and all these outdoor activities grow over the next 5 years?
So usually, go ahead. So usually, I don't know how it is with you, Jono, but when I'm at the resort, or I'm like the only 3-track skier out there. You know what I mean? I'm the only guy on the slope with one leg, and everybody's seeing you. You know what I want to see happen in the next 5 or 6 years? I want some competition out there. I want someone who's going to kick my butt on the slope and really push me. Somebody else who's adaptive, you know? I've met up with a lot of cool guys over the last few years. Some guys up in Montana with Dream Adaptive. Shout out to Dream Adaptive Montana. They run a great organization. If you're in that part of the country and you're looking to learn to ski, hit them up. They're in Whitefish, and they are awesome. But yeah, I want to see it get bigger. I want to see more adaptive athletes out on the slopes. And ultimately, I want somebody pushing me and showing me things and making my palms sweat, putting me in situations where I'm uncomfortable, you know, and I want it to be another guy who's adapted too. That's what I'd like to see happen.
So there's definitely someone in Central Oregon, because my partner and I were out ice climbing, or we climbed Three Finger Jack in the winter, and we were following this one ski track and one snowshoe track, and we were so confused. We couldn't figure out, we're like, what what are we following? Like, what are these foot tracks for? Like, how do they only have one ski? And then we saw this guy skiing down with one ski. And at first I was like, maybe it's Pete, but I don't know if you've ever skied around Three Finger Jack in the winter, but he's probably on Mount Bachelor skiing.
Yeah, no, I've skied around there in the winter, and that is my distinctive track. If it's not too steep a terrain, you'll see a ski track and you'll see a snowshoe track.
I wonder if it was you.
Possible, but I'm hoping it's not me. And
Yeah.
I'm looking for this guy. I'm coming for you. So if you guys see anybody out there too, anybody adaptive, able-bodied, whatever, if you come across an adaptive skier in the backcountry, I want to know about it. I want to meet up with this guy. So this guy or this gal, whoever it is.
We'll get Jono out there. He'll give you a run for your money, right, Jono?
Yeah, no, I don't know about that. I'm kind of interested in learning how to ski, but yeah, it sounds really hard. I think you'll be looking out for Bodie is going to be coming for you in a few years. Yeah, he's the one that's coming for you, Pete. Yeah, but yeah, I agree. I think I was basically just going to say the same thing, like just seeing people and like running into people that, you know, look like you or have a disability on the mountain and being like, oh, I have no idea who this person is because like the community is so big now. I think that is something that would be cool. Also, in terms of growth, like within climbing gyms, maybe just like a little bit more normalization of like people climbing with disabilities, gyms just being more accessible in general, maybe having adaptive programming by default, that sort of thing. I'd love to see that kind of growth. Yeah.
And essentially, Jono, you're saying like, I think we're all kind of hitting on this. You want to see us viewed as equals, right? With all the other athletes on the market and out of the gyms and on the mountains and whatever. So one thing that's important to keep in mind with that, be careful what you wish for, because they're not going to cut you any slack. I know all my friends, all my buddies, and I wouldn't have it any other way, but take the baby gloves off and let's get after it. Don't be easy on me. I want you to push me hard. That's how you get better. So I want to see more adaptives out there that are getting kind of the tough love treatment and people aren't walking on eggshells around them. You know what I mean? That's what I'd like to see.
I love that. I think that is so good for me to hear. You know, I'm competitive with myself, and yeah, I have, it's so interesting on, you know, trails and whatnot, when I meet people or they see my prosthetic attached to my backpack. I was climbing in the Tetons, and this guy, you know, I spun around. They were going to climb one thing, and I was gonna, you know, get on some ice on the dark side of the Tetons, and he just was like, like, what are you doing? That's so cool, I think. And he's trying to like say something where he's recognizing that I'm going and I'm climbing this with a nice tool, and that looks awesome. But he also like is trying not to like point out like, oh, you're disabled, but you're doing it. And like, I could tell he was just like, I don't want to say you're an inspiration, but it's so cool. And, you know, I just was like, yeah, man, we're going to like work really hard. We're going to crush it. And so, yeah, I don't want to be seen as like this special entity. I want to be like just pushed by my partners, whoever they are. And I love that. Like, I love that hard work and, you know, not getting a pass, or, you know, I don't want anyone to think that I can't be challenged, that they can't push me in the mountains. And it gets me stoked, yeah, when someone's like, work harder, go, you know, and I'm like, yes, you too, let's do it. So anyways.
That's awesome. And in the same respect to that, just like anybody else, adaptives are just like anybody else, in the fact that I'm going to surround myself with people I trust in the backcountry, who I trust my life to. And in the same regard, they're trusting me with their lives. So if they have a problem, and I've been in the backcountry in sketchy situations where, you know, I've had to drag a guy out, and they trusted me to do that. So if you're going to be an adaptive athlete in the backcountry, there's probably different levels of how extreme you want to go. But if you want to be extreme and you want to be top notch, you're not going to be viewed as adaptive anymore. You're going to have to get out there and you're going to have to pull your weight, and people are going to have to rely on you. So just like any able-bodied climber out there.
Well said.
Well, on that note, I've been following all of you guys, and I know you would all put me to shame, put me in my place. You're way stronger athletes than I probably will ever be in all of your respective sports. So it's cool to see you guys getting out and getting after it. And the inspiration term, you guys are inspiring to me as athletes. I would love to be at the same level as you guys someday. So Jono, on that note, Jono and Pete, thank you guys for both joining us this afternoon. And Kimber, thanks so much for being an awesome co-host with me. It's been great to get to know each of you and hear your stories. All three of you guys are truly incredible individuals, and it has been a pleasure talking with you.
That's the end of this episode. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button below so you never miss an episode. We love hearing from our audience, so if you have feedback, would like to discuss these topics further, or if you or someone you know would be a good future guest, please let us know. Until next time, remember, adventure is better together.